Welcome to the Undisputed podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Taft. This podcast is the full show from today's episode of Undisputed from start to finish. They've got a busy slate, so Skip, Shannon, let's get to it.
Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. It was a heavy weekend all across the country for so many. And Undisputed is going to look a little different today as we do our best to address everything that has been happening all across the country in remembrance of George Floyd. Skip, Shannon, I know we all sat back and took in so much of what happened. How are you both doing today?
Jenny, I am looking forward to doing this show with my partner, Shannon Sharpe. I know we're having a little bit of technical difficulties reaching him at this moment, but this, of all shows I've ever done, I'm looking forward to being partners with my man, Shannon.
Very well said, Skip. Shannon is working on his audio right now. So, Skip, I just want to start by asking you about everything that we saw over the weekend. There were marches, there were protests in remembrance of George Floyd. Most of the demonstrations were peaceful, although we did see some violence, some looting. So, Skip, in your opinion, after seeing everything that has been taking place all across the country, what is your reaction?
Jenny, let me start with all the great things I saw over the weekend. The unprecedented turnout of protesters, hundreds of thousands all across this country in cities and towns, and reaching all the way to Europe, to London, where there was a major protest. Again, all because of George Floyd. And in the end, it did my heart good to see the turnout, the peaceful protests, and it was from people of all colors, not just black people. I saw people of all colors, and I saw a whole lot of white people sort of band together, arm in arm, over George Floyd. It's the first time in all the killing of the unarmed black people by white cops that I felt like there was 1,000% lockstep on this one. I didn't hear a single white law enforcement leader over the last 6-7 days try to say yes, but about George Floyd. No, there was not one yes, but. It was always, this is criminal. This was flat out murder. I think the white community for the first time saw no gray area in this one. And that was the good news. That brought us all more together. I'm hearing Shannon. Shannon, are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good,
Shannon,
Skip. I got you.
Jump in. Yeah, tell me what you saw over the weekend.
Skip, what I saw was a lot of pain, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. You know, Skip, for me, what's baffling to me is that when I hear white people say they can't understand why it's happening. Skip, if you go back over the last 60 years and you look at if you want to call it a riot, if you want to call it a rebellion, if you want to call it an uprising, if you look at the cause and then the effect of what transpired. If you go back to Harlem in 1964, it was 15-year-old James Powell being shot by a lieutenant in Harlem. If you go to 1965 and you look at the Watts riots, it was an unarmed motorist being shot. You go to 1968 and with the assassination of Dr. King, and then we come almost 25 years forward, and you look at 1992 in Rodney King. You go to 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri. You go to 2015 in Baltimore with Freddie Gray. And now 2020. All of these things have something in common. All of them, with the exception of Dr. King. But he was a black man that was killed. All was killed unarmed at the hands of the police. You see, Skip, what black people are saying, you know what? We'll live with a lot of disadvantages. We'll live knowing that our healthcare system is not like it is for our counterparts. We will live with knowing that our education system is not like our counterparts. We will live with knowing that our unemployment rates, and we get hired and fired we get hired at a lower rate, fired at a higher rate than our counterparts. We will live with that, Skip. But where we draw the line is that you're killing our unarmed black men and women. That is where we draw the line. George Powell was the straw that broke the camel's back. That's what this was, Skip. This was a powder keg that has been growing. And they've been trying to say, Dr. King said it so eloquently many, many years ago. He said riots are the language of the unheard. What is it that America has failed to hear? What is it? You see, Skip, if you look at us, Skip, if you go back through the 400-year history, there is no history of black people murdering white people, rioting and looting. There is no history of that. You see the difference between what we protest and what our counterparts. Whites, Skip, after 8 weeks of being quarantined where you couldn't go, whites say, you know what? I want to have the ability to go get a haircut. I want to have the ability to go get a tattoo. I want to have the ability to go to a diner or a restaurant, sit down, possibly infect others with COVID-19. It's hard for me to believe, Skip, all these people that were protesting at the time that was going up to the state capitol, heavily armed, I might add, had been tested for the virus. You see, Skip, what they were protesting was the ability to be served. Blacks will protest the ability to be heard. You see the difference, Skip? That's what they done after 8 weeks. They started protesting to be served. Well, I can't take it anymore. You're infringing on my rights. But we protest after 400 years, after murder, brutalization after brutalization, and people lose their mind. And I don't care about the Skip. I'll be the first to admit, Skip, for me, and maybe it's because as I've gotten older, things that can be replaced hold less value to me. In Atlanta, what they did got within 600 yards of my home. My assistant that lives in my home, she called and said, well, Shannon, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to do, if it gets any closer, I want you to take what you're going to need to be able to survive and get the hell out of there. I said, I don't care anything about that house. Skip, yes, I got jerseys from high school and college, things that will never be replaced. I can get replicas, but George Floyd can't get a replica life. Freddie Gray, Eric Garner, Alton Sterling, Walter Scott, Athena Jefferson, Breonna Taylor. Let's not forget her, Skip, the young lady in Louisville, Kentucky, as they knock on the wrong door, bang, barge through, shoot her 8 times as she slept. Let's not forget her. You see, Skip, I don't get it. What? See, they say, oh, violent. Look at all those looters. Skip, it's almost the perfect storm. You get all these unarmed killing of black men and women, and then you get COVID-19 and so many, 40 million are out of work. A large segment of that is black. So now you have the perfect storm. You have frustration. You have anger that starts to spill over. I got a wife. I got a kid that I got to provide for, and I have no job. You damn right I'm going to go to the grocery store. You damn right I'm going to go get a T-shirt or a pair of jeans or some sneakers. Absolutely. That's the way it works. I wonder if people understand what the Boston Tea Party was. Let's not forget the Tea Party was not people sitting down drinking tea. It was taxation without representation, Skip. So what was valuable? The tea was valuable. That's why they dumped it in the harbor. Led up having a war, didn't we, Skip, behind it? The formulation of America. So America was built on protest, was built on riots. Now when black people feel they can't be heard, they can't control the anger. Skip, that's what happens, Skip. When you get angry, Skip, you don't say, well, oh, this is valuable. I don't want to throw this. Oh, that's a perfect good. No, you frustrated, you lash out at that moment. Skip, this is so many years of frustration and anger that is uncontrollable. The rage started to spill because they said, hold on. We saw this on camera. Let Pookie rob a liquor store and kill the man behind the camera. You don't say, well, we need more information. We need to, Skip, what information, more information did you need? You had enough information to fire him, but you didn't have enough information to charge him. And it's like, here we go again. And Skip, you remember when we first talked about this, I said, Skip, what they're going to do? They're going to do an autopsy on this man, and they're going to come back with an underlying condition. So in other words, Skip, he had hypertension, the possible of intoxicants. There were things in his system. So in other words, what the coroner said, this man was too unhealthy to survive his air supply being restricted for 9 minutes. Skip, they say President Lincoln had what they call Marfan syndrome. So it was a combination between that disease, that illness, and a bullet to the back of the head that possibly killed Lincoln. You see how dumb that sounds? You can't say because someone has an underlying condition. The only thing I would ask the coroner, at that very moment, without the air supply being restricted for 9 minutes, would he have dropped dead at that very moment, regardless of his conditions? Absolutely not. Skip, this was a long time coming. Now, let me tell you, if you think this was bad, If you think this was bad, let them get off. Skip, you and I, and we've kind of talked about this off the air. If they let this man go, if they don't hurry up and charge these, because you hear the saying, no justice, no peace. What does that mean? Without justice, you get no peace. That's it. And before I turn it back over to you, Skip, there's a saying that we've been saying, I've heard my great-grandmother say it. It's a great thing to be from rural South Georgia and to be able to witness things. Skip, have you ever heard whites in America saying, we shall overcome? That's a Negro spiritual. That's a hymn. We shall overcome. If I'm a citizen in America, I'm born, I'm naturalized, whatever the case may be, Skip. If I'm a citizen, why should I have to fight for rights that's given to our white counterparts upon birth? I'm a citizen. There should be no civil rights. There should be nothing. I should be able to get health care, education. I should be able to get employment just like my counterpart. And even then, Skip, we didn't protest. Even though we're undereducated, even though the health system doesn't work in our favor, even though the unemployment doesn't work in our favor, we don't protest that. We protest the brutalization and the killing of unarmed men, and people still can't seem to see and understand why. But Skip, this is a hashtag right now. Now, I've seen a lot of black and white hands interlocked. I've seen a lot of people jumping on. Colin Kaepernick tried to give y'all a 4-year head start, but you didn't want to hear him. So I'm going to see, Skip. Now, I'm going to check back in 6 months. I'm going to check back in a year, in 5 years, and see if we still have that same energy, if we still won, if we still together, because it's going to be very interesting, because it's the cool thing. There is no wrong right now, because a lot of people that looked down at Colin Kaepernick 4 years ago, now all of a sudden they got a whole lot to say now, Skip. So that's where I am. I'm not surprised, but they better hurry up and charge these other 3, and they better make sure they get a conviction, or they're going to burn it down again, and it will be worse.
So I love and respect hearing the years of anger and frustration in your voice right now. And I told you last Tuesday, the day after this murder was committed, that this officer, Derek Chauvin, must be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And now that I've seen new video, the other 2 officers who held him down from behind that I couldn't see in the first video must be charged. The 4th officer who stood by and watched this as it went on for 8 minutes and 46 seconds must be charged somehow. He must be prosecuted somehow to the full extent of the law. So I am so with you. And I do believe a lot of white eyes have been opened to this. This is different than all the others that came before. All the ones that we've talked about for years on the show, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Tavon Martin, Michael Brown. I can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And I'm tired of talking about it as you're tired of living it. Now, to the deepest issue here, what a lot of us sat most of the day yesterday and watched, certainly here in Los Angeles. The town of Santa Monica was just ransacked. It was looted. It was burned. It's a tourist destination that a lot of people around the country may know from the Ferris wheel out on Santa Monica Pier. Shannon, let's talk 1,000% real about looting and burning. I was shaken by it, but I want you to know, I'm speaking obviously as a white man here, my emotions are very mixed about this at this point in time. Obviously, my deepest instinct is looting and burning is not the right way to solve all this. But to all of your points, it has come to this as the last gasp. The only way to get white America's attention is this way. Were some people just looting to rob? Yeah, they were just looting to rob. But was a lot of the emotion that was spent over the weekend, was it years of pent-up frustration and emotion and anger and outrage and fear? Yes, it was. And I can't condemn it. I get it. it's hard for me to support it, but I can't condemn it. And I just want you to know that as much as I was torn, I would see the interviews with the white shopkeepers on Melrose Avenue here in LA on Saturday night. These are mom and pop shop owners. These are immigrants. These are second generation immigrants. These are minority owners of these stores, and they just got ransacked and burned. And it hurt me to watch these interviews with these people because they were kind of innocent bystanders. It's kind of collateral damage. But Shannon, I want people to know watching this show, I'm with the premise of this. It has come to this. This is black people saying, hey, we just can't take it anymore. As you pointed out, not only has everyone been quarantined, and a lot of black people as well as white people have lost their jobs, and there's no real hope and end in sight, but this is saying, I'm fed up, I've had enough, and the only way I can get your attention is to loot and burn. And again, it's hard for me, Shannon, because I'm not advocating it. I just tell you I get it. I understand it. And I loved what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote yesterday in the op-ed piece that he wrote for the Los Angeles Times. He said, Shannon, he said, protests often are used as an excuse for some to take advantage. I don't want to see stores looted or even buildings burnt. But African Americans have been living in a burning building for many years. Okay? I get that. I am with that. And I loved what he said in the end. Kareem said, so maybe the black community's main concern right now isn't whether protesters are social distancing, staying 3 to 6 feet apart, or whether a few desperate souls steal some T-shirts or even set a police station on fire, but whether their sons, husbands, brothers, and fathers will be murdered by cops or wannabe cops just for going on a walk or a drive. I get that. I feel that. And if nothing else, I think we had an outpouring of emotion that at least got people's attention for the first time since the Rodney King riots here in LA that you brought up in 1992, when, by the way, 63 people died. As yet, I don't know anybody who's died in the riot. Maybe I've missed something, but it hasn't quite come to that. Maybe we're heading there. But to all of your points, this is hundreds of years of frustration built up and pouring out in ways that finally are opening the eyes of everyone in our country that we have a very serious hair trigger, so to speak, issue going on here. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I want you to know how mixed my emotions are about rioting to get attention that must be gotten at this point.
Well, Skip, do you understand the original in America? One of the original reasons was riots was to scare black people and keep them in their place. Remember how they firebombed? In 1960, they were firebombing churches. If you tried to vote, Skip, back in the 60s, when you try to vote, you would have to give your name, where you live, and who you work for. That information was passed along to the KKK. They came to see you in the middle of the night, burned the cross in your yard, or burned your house down. You probably was going to lose your job when they came and told the master that you tried to register to vote. So then, you see, as Fannie Lou Hamer once said, she says, I don't get it. She said, when they were firebombing us in our churches and burning our buildings down, people forget, Skip, May 31st, 1921, the Tulsa massacre and riots where they burned a whole black city to the ground, to ashes. What was that trying to do? To scare and to keep them in their place. That's what this is about. So where do you think blacks learned it from? Oh, because see, Skip, that's what you care about. What do you value more than life? Buildings, things, shoes, sneakers, artifacts. They say we'll burn it to the ground. If we can't have some of it, you can't have any of it either. And that's the thinking, the mind. Skip, if a man is living in hell, he doesn't care about going to hell. And that's what some blacks feel right now. This is hell right here on earth. And we want it to get better. You keep promising us for 400 years. Skip, this is what we've been asked. We've been asked to see the best of America while giving the worst of America. And they say we've had enough. So either you hear us now. Can you, Skip, you know the slogan, can you hear us now? No justice, no peace. Now we're tired. We keep telling you there are officers, and I'm tired of this. Well, if you want to say there's a few bad apples, because see, that's the narrative, Skip. No, it's systemic. This is embedded. And a lot of the things that the previous administration, the checks and balances that they put on the force were thrown away. Well, if you want to say there's a few bad apples, there's a few bad apples in this group that's causing all this. But this is the problem that I have, Skip. They say it's a few bad apples when it comes to police officers. But when they label blacks, it's the entire race. They don't say it's a few bad apples. They say it's all of us. Yeah. So even the bad apples get lumped in with the good apples, and the good apples sometimes get snuffed out as well. Huh? Mm-hmm. Where is that? Mm. I've been trying, Dr. King,
so
Skip,
Shannon,
it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, finish. Dr. King.
No, I was saying, Dr. King said, Skip, he foretold it. If you think about this, Skip, and you see all these people, a lot of people that despise Dr. King and their ancestors despise Dr. King, quoting, Skip, he was peaceful. If Dr. King was marching arm in arm, saying, we shall overcome, how in the hell did dogs come to get to that protest? How did water cannons get to that protest? How did billy clubs that was used to go upside their head and hit them in their mouth get to that protest? So violence has always been perpetrated. The purveyor of violence in American history has been the government, America herself. And now, you see an uprising, Skip. I'm tired of you beating me. I'm going to fight you back, Skip. You know animals. You love animals. But if you abuse an animal long enough, he'll lash out at you. And if he doesn't get you, you get tired of it and you give him to the pound, they try to give him to somebody else, and all that abuse he's taken over the years, it'll lash out at somebody else that all they tried to do was love it. And you see these rights, Skip, a lot of these didn't have anything to do with it. But when something gets fed up and get tired of you abusing it, it will lash out, and it will bite, and it will ruin anything in its sight. Skip, they keep saying the hurricanes and tornadoes and wildfires are getting worse. If you don't notice, Skip, these rebellions, these uprisings, these riots, these protests, they're getting worse. They're getting worse, America. You need to listen. See, I think the biggest thing is, Skip, is that white America is afraid. Just think, if black America were to come to power, like white America is in power now, and do to them what has been done to us for 400 years. So starting tomorrow, Skip, the next seven generations of whites would have done to them what black America has had done for 401 years, since 1619 when they landed here and 1620 when Jamestown was founded. So let that sink in for a second. You talk about violence, but that's not who we are. That's not us, Skip.
Yeah. So speaking of Dr. King, he was obviously all about peaceful protesting through the 60s until he was assassinated. Then we had Colin Kaepernick back in 2016 start with peaceful protests by kneeling during the national anthem before games. And yet now I've seen a big shift in Colin Kaepernick. I thought maybe he could be a Dr. King and lead with a very powerful voice that he was given and do so with nonviolent tactics and preaching from Colin. And now we don't get that anymore. We have a serious shift because, as he tweeted the other day, when civility, meaning peaceful protest, leads to death, revolting is the only logical reaction. And he went on to say, in fighting for liberation, there's always retaliation. And now they've started a fund for what he calls the freedom fighters, starting in Minneapolis, the protesters who resorted to looting, burning. So he's supporting that. He's encouraging that. And it's stunning to me. It's a little frightening to me that we're heading toward complete anarchy here. But I do love the fact that everybody's attention has now been gotten. So I'm with you on that. Heck, I'm with Colin on this. But I hope we're not heading for complete anarchy here in the next few days. I hope people don't continue to die over this. That's my deepest emotion.
Skip, one thing, because you mentioned Dr. King. Skip, do you remember that Dr. King, upon his death, had a 68% disapproval rating? President Trump right now is in the mid to upper 40s. So he was 25% more disliked than President Trump. And everybody loves him today.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick, that's where he's headed.
Appreciate the words from both of you guys. We're far from done talking about this. And I just want to say that over the weekend, the biggest thing for me was just realizing how blind I've been to the pain and suffering. And you try to think that you understand, but you don't. And I have no sense of reality about what the Black community has gone through, continues to go through. I see you, I hear you. I can do better. I can educate myself. I can learn more. And there's just so much more that needs to be done. This is a wake-up call, and I think we're starting to see it. Next up on Undisputed, Stephen Jackson will join us. He was very close with George Floyd. We look forward to talking to him after the break. No mercy. Welcome back to Undisputed, and joining us now, Fox Sports NBA analyst Stephen Jackson. And Stephen, we thank you for joining us. We know how hard this has been, and we know how close you were with George Floyd. You spoke at a rally Friday in Minneapolis, and may I just say that our hearts are with you. Everyone at Fox Sports, you've been on our mind, and I cannot even begin to understand the pain you're feeling, your friends, your family. But I do want to ask your reaction to what you've seen across the country as so many have come out to protest and honor George Floyd.
I'm actually still in Minnesota now. I came here with a couple pair of clothes, and I'm having a shot at buying clothes stuff. I'm still here. This is something I've never seen before. Being able to be on the ground here in Minnesota and see the passion in these people, it just makes you think, what happened to common sense? You know what I mean? These things are happening right in front of our eyes, and it sucks that people have to burn down police stations and just show their frustration because we're not getting treated fair. I mean, this is happening all over the world. You see it on camera day after day after day, and we're not getting no justice. And I just think that the fact that Minnesota, they reacted the way they did because there's so much pain here. You see the pain all around the world, but actually here where it actually happened, the pain is different. And I'm not surprised that the people from Minnesota responded that way. I'm actually happy they did, but at the same point, we can't get away from what we're trying to do, and that's get justice. The love has been great, and it's been shown. People from every city to city, everybody's been standing up and supporting my brother, and I appreciate it. But we can't fall for the trick bag and go away and let them play on our pain. And I think that's what they're starting to do. But here in Minnesota, the love's been great, the support has been great, and I think they're starting to hear us.
Stag, you know, you and I, we spoke, we've been speaking, and I told you, I say, Stags, pray about it. I said, be measured, be thoughtful, and let the words flow. You did an excellent job of doing that. You see, when I look at Minnesota, Stags, I look at it like Philando Castile is not even 2 years old, 2.5 years old at the top. And they say, now again, you see, Big George was the wick, but the powder keg with Walter Scott and Alton Sterling and Eric Garner and Freddie Gray and Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin, they were all stuffed into this dynamite keg. And Big George, when they did, see, Skip, it's kind of like what Dr. King went through. When he walked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he knew what would happen, but because back then, everybody sat down to watch the evening news together. It wasn't like it is now. You got news all throughout the day. You only got the news at 6 o'clock. So what we saw was what happened to Dr. King on the...
Nobody's even replying to her. So this is the stuff that's still...
Edmund Pettus. He brought that...
going on in Minnesota right now. But to...
Violence into our living rooms.
For me and George, I live in Port Arthur, Texas. He lives in...
We had on Monday afternoon...
3rd Ward, Houston. That's 45 minutes away.
Violence coming to our living room.
So we was in Houston every weekend. So...
Where a man took a knee in a very...
we had different friends back and forth.
Iconic pose, Skip. Is it ironic?
I had a friend named Tello, rest in peace. He said, man,
that the very pose that Colin Kaepernick struck.
And I got a homeboy named Floyd.
On the sideline many years ago.
That looked like you. I'm like, man, y'all might have the same.
Is the very pose that man struck on another.
Same daddy. Like, yeah, right. So when we.
Man's neck for 9 minutes.
Seen each other. The first time we seen each other.
In Stacks. I can just...
you know how it goes, Shannon. The first time me and Floyd seen each other.
Imagine what it was like.
I say, man, who your daddy? He say, who your
to be there and see the outpouring. You know,
daddy? And
Big George didn't know he was loved like that.
We just hit it off.
And did he stack?
Man, we just hit it off. And I tell you, Shannon, and hey, that's the best part about it. You know, it was genuine from day one. Every time I went I was with his brother yesterday, and his brother, Houston, Third Ward was my first stop. His brother told me that Floyd used to always tell him. And I think the fact that we looked alike made us become, man, one day we're going to be on top of the world. Closer. Over the years, we didn't expect it to be this way, man. But as you see some of the posts I posted on my page, the way he's getting shown love, I mean, he's one of the only persons, they never screamed my name in the Netherlands. They screamed my brother. One of the only people that put that name in the Netherlands. So that means that really supported me genuinely. If you look at something right, I just want to be able to get on this page. I think I was on Fox, Justice, and I just want to continue to use. He posted a post of me on Fox saying how much my voice in the right way, because she's proud of me, how long we've been rocking. This is somebody that I really cared about, you know, maybe somebody, and how much he's seen, as we talked about that really loved me genuinely. So about me doing things after basketball, we talked about being great father. I put everything aside and I came here and I'm still out there. And that's the curve he was taking here in Minnesota on the ground, man. I'm going to do whatever I can do to Minnesota. And it sucks that somebody gets justice for my brother. Who shows so much love, who tried his hardest.
So, Stephen, give us
to be a protector, provider for everybody.
He some more detail, some more background.
Shows so much love, Skip, that he had to die.
About how you got to know George Floyd.
Somebody showing so much hate.
In Port Arthur, Texas, which is obviously...
That's what kills me the most.
A long way from Minneapolis.
I know.
What was your relationship like?
There's probably no way you can get into a whole lot of detail.
And what age did it start at in Port Arthur?
But it has stems. He came in
Arthur.
Well, I want to go back.
Contact with the police because the
first and touched on something Shannon said.
I guess the owner of the store had called.
I forgot to say this too, Shannon. Even with all those names,
and say he tried to pass off a phony
What's your name? Ardell Sherrill.
A phony $20 bill. Do you believe
it's going on right now? He was.
Big George knew the money was counterfeit.
Arrested by the police and killed under their custody. Nah, and from what I'm hearing around, you know, I've been on the ground. I've been at the store last couple of days. The money wasn't even fake. So I've been on the ground last couple of days. It's a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot of mistakes. And it's more to it, Shannon. That you're right, I can't stay on air, but I can share with you off air. You know I'd be willing to share with you off air.
Okay.
It's a lot of stuff going on, man. It's a lot of stuff going on. But I guarantee we're going to get to the end of it. And even with the new videos coming out, as you've seen, they put him in the car and pulled him out the car. You know what I'm saying? To beat him up. So It's a lot of stuff going on, man. It's a lot of stuff going on, but we're going to get to the bottom of it.
So, Stephen, you said, you know, you can't buy this trick bag that people are trying to sell you right now. What do you want to see happen from this point forward? Do you have a specific fix that you want to see happen in this country going forward?
Well, one, I didn't know my voice was as powerful as it is. You know, that's one thing I didn't know. Two, we got to continue to stay together. We got to continue. That's what they fear, Skip. They fear me, you, and Shannon and all races standing side by side, non-violent, standing there with the same common goal, and that's justice. That's what they care about. And the outroar has been so great that they're starting to set up props for people to destroy stuff in Atlanta. They had a pallet of bricks, loose bricks, just sitting in the middle of Atlanta downtown. There's no construction, Skip. No construction. Why are those bricks there? Now you're seeing videos. These youngsters are woke, Skip. So they're starting to film these people that come in there just to incite riot, to destroy stuff, to make the protest look unpeaceful. So it's a lot of people around that's not for the cause, that's coming in to try to destroy it. And when I say the trick bag, don't fall for it. Keep the peaceful protest, do it the right way, and stand for what you believe in. But here in Minnesota, I'm sorry. Here in Minnesota, they had to respond like that because they've been getting killed every year. They ain't been getting answers. A black cop shot a woman, and he was in jail 2 days later and charged with murder. These cops are still not arrested. So they should have responded that way, Skip, and here in Minnesota. But I think everywhere else, we appreciate the support, but be smart because we don't want them to play on our pain. We don't want to hurt what we built. We want to continue to build and get some stuff done, get some policies changed, get some laws changed so we can be fair and they can stop treating us like animals.
Well, the thing is what they do is that they'll shift the narrative. Kind of like when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, Skip, you remember they talked about, okay, it was about the flag. It was about the military. It was about the vet. It was about everything except what that man told you about. Now what they're trying to do is say, look, they're burning the buildings. They're looting. They're robbing. What was the cause that led them to start rioting and a rebellion to begin with? Let's talk about that issue. There's a cause and effect that transpired, and they want to shift. Now, we're not going to let you shift it. You and I both know. Stags, we done seen a lot of things. We ain't rolling up on no scene with no kerosene in our backpacks, rolling up on skateboards, rolling up on rental bicycles. That ain't how we roll.
Not at all.
So there's always, in even every great movement, everything that's good, Skip, there will be one or two that try and hijack it and try to capitalize on pain and suffering. Because, Skip, even sometimes, even in a worthy cause, you'll find somebody trying to siphon money out the back end for even a worthy cause. So what we have here is that people trying to peacefully protest, and you have a few that's taking advantage. This is our opportunity to hijack this and try to make somebody look bad. But we're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. We're smart enough to know we're going to keep our eye on the ball. We see the ball. So don't think you can move it and put shells over it and try to shift it around, because we got our eye on the prize. We're going to get change in these police departments. Look, we're going to start immediately, because we don't expect something that's been in place for 400 years to change overnight. But we expect it to get started so we can see daylight.
Right. You know what, Skip? It's kind of like and a lot of people don't understand. So I'm gonna put it in basketball terms for some people. Imagine me and you playing one-on-one, Skip, and I know the referee. He's my friend, and every time you drive to the basket, I'm just hacking you, and he ain't calling nothing. That's how black people feel. That's how black people feel. We trying, but it ain't fair. We keep trying to score. We keep trying to be successful, but you keep fouling us, and we can't get out 2 free throws. It's not fair. But Skip, let me foul you. Free throws, and you get the ball out of bounds. And that's just how it is. We're not treated fair. You know what I mean? But we gonna fight for it. And Skip, the reason why I'm comfortable being in this position, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for this being in this position. And people know I love everybody. I've always stood for every race. So I'm comfortable in this position, standing for my brother, and I'm standing for equality for everybody. So I'm comfortable here being in this position. I didn't ask for it, but Lord knows I've embraced it.
Yeah. So, Stephen, sum this up. I told Shannon earlier, I have mixed emotions about looting and burning. I get the emotion behind it, and I do love the attention that it's gained, because it's opening a bunch of eyes to the depth of bitterness and frustration and fear and anger that you feel as a race. But you said nonviolent. Are you still good with nonviolent? Will nonviolent work going forward?
Well, let me explain it. Here in Minnesota, I don't care if they burn this whole place down. You know what I mean? In Minnesota, I was all for it. In Atlanta, I didn't really get it. We built Atlanta, basically. There's a lot of us in Atlanta. Yeah. They call Atlanta Black Hollywood. A lot of the rappers and entertainers, they do a lot for the city in Atlanta. So I did not understand that in Atlanta. I live in Atlanta, and I did not understand why they were burning stuff down. Now, honestly, nowhere they shouldn't have been tearing stuff up, because I call that hustling backwards. You try so hard to build your neighborhoods up. You try so hard to build people up around you. Then you go back and tear it back down. Go to the place. Go out there where they killed Aubrey at. Go out there and loot out there and tear their place up. But make it make sense. I don't agree with it, Skip, but here in Minnesota, I think that's the only way it had to be done.
Whew. Stephen, Minneapolis is my hometown, and it's embarrassing to see what has been happening and what you're experiencing, and I just want you to know that our hearts are with you there, and I wish I could be there to do more in this situation.
Let me say this. You shouldn't be upset. You shouldn't be upset about Minnesota. Your place is representing well. They're representing well, and they're the reason why we're starting to get some justice, why we're going to get justice, and this world is making noise. And I thank Minnesota. Your city did their job.
Stephen, thank you for sharing your words on George.
Thank you, guys.
We love you. We hope to see you back in LA soon.
No mercy.
Welcome back to Undisputed. We are now joined by Fox Sports NFL analyst Greg Jennings, who is in Minneapolis. Greg, you've been on my mind. I grew up very, very close to where you're living right now, and I've been thinking about you, and I know that your wife has a business downtown Minneapolis. You chose to be there to watch out for it. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the situation and what you've been seeing and experiencing in Minneapolis?
First and foremost, appreciate it. Appreciate the thoughts and the prayers. It is real. And for me, as not only a Black man, but as a father, as a husband, as a business owner, there's a lot of mixed emotions about everything that's transpired. Shannon, I listened to the last segment, and you mentioned cause and effect. And there's a cause and effect to everything. And what ties people to either the cause or either the effect is their relationship. And my relationship in this has been not only that I'm a Black man and I've been on the end of racial profiling as a Black man, but now my wife's business is in harm's way because of the effect of the cause that we visibly were able to see from law enforcement with George in regards to George Floyd. And so I was raised as an individual, as a young man, to learn how to put out fires, but at the same time, how to prevent a fire. And in the midst of where fires were spreading and just kind of bursting everywhere on the scene, I felt like I was one that wanted to prevent the fire from happening versus having to respond and by putting it out. And that was what I was doing with my wife's store, along with a couple other gentlemen that manned the store with me. And it's been an interesting dynamic because from an outside perspective and seeing Stack and communicating with Stack and Steven Jackson through text message and taking my daughters, my older two daughters, along with my wife down to the Justice Rally in honor of George Floyd and having them experience it and just seeing their emotions and their response, I felt like it was something that unfortunately is needed. And the response that has come of it, whatever way people have decided to respond, it was needed for them. Not that I'm in agreement with some of the arson and the vandalism and the looting, but I will say this. I had to ask myself this question this morning. Am I more upset and bothered by the arson and the looting and the acts of vandalism or by the murder? And for me, I have to remain with my eyes on that, and that's the murder, because that's the cause. That's the reason why people are showing their emotion and they're acting out in whatever way that they feel that they need to in this moment. And I have to respect that.
And I think that's the biggest thing, Greg, when I'm hearing you. And I get it. I totally get it. Like you said, I mean, that's home for you. But for me, when I look at it, I'm like, hold on. And we see a lot of this. Yeah, that was bad how they did George, and he shouldn't have died like that. But what does that building have to do? What does looting have to do? But when you get so upset, and you've been upset as long as Black America has been upset, you lose. It's like you go dark and you throw caution to the wind. You like, I've been living and burning in hell. They've been looting. If you look at the two biggest looting happen in the last 15 years, the recession, when they bailed out big business, they looted America. And this last stimulus package, $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion, that none of it got to small minority Black businesses. We got a $1,200 stimulus check, and there are some corporations that got $3 billion. That's the looting of America. But Greg, so let me ask you a question. So when you go down there, are you standing out front and you saying, bro, this is a Black-owned business, man. Don't bother this, man. I'm sorry for the pain that you're going through, because that's what happened a lot in Atlanta in 1992 with the Rodney King. A lot of Black-owned businesses put Black-owned or stood out in front of their business, and they were unharmed.
We did. Immediately I told my wife to print up some signs, Black-owned business, But at the same time, I felt like we needed to do more. We needed to make sure that the community and those who were directly impacted knew that we were standing with them too. So we wanted to put something to honor George Floyd. So we put both signs side by side. But yeah, I stood outside her building, but I also at night, I stood inside because one of the things that I wanted to make sure people understood, and those who were with me, who I decided to come down there and be with me and stand with me. And I will share this. They were armed. I was not, but I was comfortable with that. I wanted them to understand that we're not coming down here to incite or ignite anything further. We're coming to be a deterrent. We're coming to diffuse anything that may potentially happen, and to ultimately, if we encounter someone who is getting ready to potentially vandalize a building or loot, to kind of change their heart, change their mind. Like, look, that's not what we're all about. And, I was fortunate. I didn't have to do those things. I didn't have to stand up and guard the building where someone was actually about to come. We had some pedestrians walking by that, we ran to the windows and we were out at the doors, but they continued to move on. I will say this, every building around my wife's store was potentially either vandalized when it comes to graffiti or whatever the case may be, or they experienced and it had looting take place within their businesses. And I'm so blessed that I decided to make a stand and take a stand for my wife, and she did the same thing. And I'm also, and she can say this better than I can. She found it hugely significant that those who were committing the acts, whomever they were, all races didn't matter, decided to overlook her store. It means a lot. It really does, in spite of the situation.
So, Greg, how did you feel about those shops next door getting vandalized? How did it? Were you okay with that in the end?
No, I was not. I am not. If I were to show you images right now, every shop around my wife's shop is boarded up, plywood, windows covered, and we decided not to do that. And I understand why they did it. They did it because they wanted to protect what was on the inside, but they had a fear that they were targeted. And we did not. We have that same fear. Every single morning since this has taken place, I get up, I pray, and I tell my wife, babe, I'll be right back, because I run out the house to go downtown to go and look and assess the store, both inside and out. And that's the reality that we're in. It's not going to change anytime soon. The National Guards are literally a block away from my wife's store. And even with that, there's still this sense of, but I got to go and check. And that's what we as the Black community specifically have always dealt with as a Black man. Yes, we see the uniforms and the costumes that these law enforcement officers wear, but we still got to protect ourselves. We still got to stand and be the guard and protectors for our families, our children. We have to be that everlasting voice that they hear of encouragement, of lifting, to where they can understand that this too will pass. This too shall pass. And if it doesn't, you have to continue and remain diligent and willing to stand and endure.
Think about what you said, Greg. You said that the National Guard is a block away from your wife's store, and you still feel the need to go check on it. That's how Black America feels. Although those are law enforcement and there are police officers that's there to protect and serve, I still got to watch myself because I still feel unprotected. Greg, I'm glad that your store was unharmed, but please, please don't value artifacts and possessions more than life. That's all. I understand that was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but you have insurance and those things could be replaced. George ain't coming back. Trayvon ain't coming back. Walter Scott, Alton Sterling, Althea Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, they're not coming back, Greg. That's all I'm saying. And I understand when you pour your hard work and tears, and I think as I've gotten older, Greg, I've come to realize this, because when I was younger, Greg, cars and things of that, it meant something to me until I realized, hold on, what the hell I got insurance for? If something happens, they steal it, it can be replaced. So I'm glad that everything worked out for in your best, in the well-being and the best interest of you and your wife and the store. But so many times people will value the building and they'll forget about Big George. And I don't want that to happen. I don't ever want a building or an artifact to have more value than human life.
And I will say this in response to what you just said. We will never value the building and what we have inside the building more than what has happened in the reality that we live in. However,
right,
the same reason why those who are out on the front lines in that neighborhood where I take my daughter to go and play inner city tennis twice a week, they are standing. They know George isn't coming back. They know Trayvon Martin isn't coming back, but they still feel like they got to stand and they have to put themselves in a position to where potentially, you know what, my life may be at risk. You know why, Shannon? Because as a Black American, it already is. That's just how we feel.
Yep.
When I get pulled over by the police officer, there's an emotion that goes on within me that my heart races and anxiety pulses, and then I have to try to mask that when he comes to the door because my pride won't let me show that I'm a little afraid, that I'm scared. So I stand up and I buck a little bit, not to ignite or to incite for him to think that I'm going to harm him or challenge him, but I'm not going to let you put your knee on my neck in this moment. And that's not what happened to me or happens to me literally, but essentially, that's what they tried to do.
So, Greg, sum this up for us. You're a smart man. We're all sick and tired of all the words, the platitudes, something must be done. What must be done? Give me a specific fix that you would like to see put into action sooner than later.
To be honest with you, Skip, I don't have that answer. And the one thing that I would share is that we all have a tool that we can use. And right now you're hearing mine. We just heard Stephen Jackson's. We've been hearing so many. We have to continue to use the tool of our voices. There are power in words. And if we can unify our words as Americans, not just Black community, white community, if we can start to speak the same language, what someone listens to and hears from me, they may not be willing to take in. But if they hear it from you, Skip, because you look like them, that is the commonality that they have. They may lend an ear to what you're saying. That may be the very thing that I've been harping and been trying to project. So if we can unify our voices on some level, I think that is where we start. And that is when we will start to really see changes being made in our government, within our governments, when it comes to policies that have been in place that should not be in place. We can build things up with our voices and we can tear things down with our voices.
Beautifully said.
Stop being quiet. That makes total sense. Greg, thank you so much for your words, for your honesty, and thinking about you and your family. My heart's in Minneapolis right now, and we appreciate you being here.
No mercy.
North Carolina Central men's basketball coach Lavelle Moten said that white coaches from the Power 5 conferences in both basketball and football need to speak up more when African Americans die at the hands of law enforcement. Shannon, your reaction to what he said?
Well, he's 100% right, because a lot of these guys, Skip, the big bonuses that they get and the prestige and the fame that they acquire is on the back of a lot of Black men. And it's funny that I find that they were quick to say we're a family, we're together, until you walk out that door and then I don't know you. You know, there have been a lot of coaches that when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling, I don't need to call their names. We know who you are. You were very outspoken in how disrespectful the knee was. But you've been radio silent when that very pose that Colin Kaepernick took on the sideline was the very pose that took a man's life. You've been very silent. So you reap the benefit of young black men, but you won't stand in support of young black men dying. Now, guess what, Skip? They're going to go back into the houses of black grandmas and moms and dads, aunts and uncles, and they're going to try to convince the mom, the dad, the parents, and whomever's in the room that they're the best, and I got the best interest, and I care about your son, and I want to educate him, and I want to help him to reach all his goals. But if I'm a parent, or if I'm in that meeting, I say, okay, what do you think about George Floyd? What do you think about Trayvon Martin and Alton Sterling? Because I have yet to hear you speak on that, because you know that's a black man that you want to come to your, that's a black son. He's going to be a black man. You know, you want him to come to your school. So what do you think about those? And then you have to hear what he has to say about that. So he's absolutely right, Skip. The thing is, we can talk, white have to talk to other whites about racism, Skip. That's what it is. That's what has to happen. Skip, we're the only victim. We are the only victim that is asked to solve a problem that's committed against us. They don't ask a victim. Now, I need you to tell the perpetrator what you can do so he doesn't do that again. So we ask black, what can they do? Huh? You had it 400 years. You've been working on it for 400 years. You had us in slavery for 250 years. You had us in apartheid and Jim Crow for another 100 years. And you gave us voting rights in 1960, what, 65, 64, 65? So you want us to figure that out after we've been held back for 400 years, 250 in slavery, 100 years of Reconstruction, Jim Crow, apartheid, and 50 years, 55 years of voting. Now you want us to come up with how we the best to solve this problem. Huh? Nah, bro. Y'all get together. Y'all work this out. But we're gonna stay on you. We're gonna keep going until you make changes. You see the frustration, but the storms only get worse. Skip, you remember like Harvey and Katrina, storms are getting worse because the conditions in which these storms come about are getting worse. You notice the protests, they're getting worse. The rebellion, the uprising, whatever you want to call them, whatever you want to label, the environment is getting worse. So they're feeding this frenzy. So start with the police, the institution, the systemic. Ain't no few bad apples. It's systemic. It's been in position for so long that it has to come undone. It has to come toppling down. And we're going to bring it down.
So, Shannon, I don't know Coach Moten. Until yesterday, I didn't know a whole lot about Coach Moten. But yesterday, after I read his comments on ESPN radio, I became a big fan of Lavelle Moten because these were piercing, powerful comments, skewering comments about the system that is college basketball and football and how it really works. Because he called out the white Power 5 coaches by saying these coaches have been able to create generational wealth, meaning their grandkids' kids are going to be able to live a prosperous life because of athletes who were the complexion of George Floyd, who were able to run or throw a football or shoot a basketball. But whenever people, he went on to say, the complexion of George Floyd are killed or assassinated or murdered in the street in broad daylight, see George Floyd, they, the coaches, are silent. Well, it took Coach Moten from North Carolina Central speaking out to finally push some Power 5 coaches to issue statements. Tom Izzo, soon after, issued a statement. I'm not going to stay silent anymore. We saw some of the more powerful college football coaches, Coach Saban, Jimbo Fisher, Mike Gundy, Yesterday, they said, well, I guess we better issue a statement. Well, it's better late than never, but it would have been so much better last Tuesday. You and I spoke strongly about what had happened on Memorial Day. And it took this man, Coach Moten, living in coaching obscurity at this point, to speak out more powerfully than any coach in the land has spoken out about George Floyd. It took that man way down there at North Carolina Central to speak powerful words that reverberated across the country and moved a lot of major college, Power 5 type college coaches to finally at least issue statements. They didn't speak publicly, they just issued statements, because statements can be much safer than actually doing a press conference about it. So I want to applaud him, because he made waves. He made some things happen that I haven't seen happen in a long time in college coaching. And we appreciate you, Coach Moten.
But still, the thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to let him off the hook, because right now issuing a statement is easy. It's almost sacrilegious not to. See, doing the right thing when it's unpopular, a la Colin Kaepernick. See, the easy thing was to castigate him, because the masses was going to be on your side, because you hijacked this narrative. You made it about the flag, you made it about the vets, you made it about the military, and you have yet to talk about the issue in which he told you he was doing this in honor of. So that was the time, Skip, to do the unpopular thing then. This is very popular. Skip, this is almost like giving somebody flowers at their grave, because that's the right thing. That's the easy thing to do. When someone was being talked about, Skip, I just saw in 2019, Dr. King had a 90% approval rating. Now remember, upon his death, he was in the high 60s disapproval. You see the difference, Skip? When all these big Power 5 coaches had an opportunity to stand with Colin Kaepernick, commend him for speaking out against police brutality, they was radio silent. Now it's the right thing to do. It's the easy thing to do. But like I said, Skip, I'm going to check back with him in 2-3 years. I'm going to check back with you and see if you have that same energy, because I see a lot, Skip. I've been looking at Twitter and I've been looking at IG, and I see a lot of black and white hands intertwined. Oh, we are one, and we united, and we don't win unless we all win. Hashtags are fine, but black people are tired of hashtags. We want results. Give us results.
Yep.
And it's not going to change until we get results. So, Skip, although I commend them, I'm not going to give them too much of praise. I ain't patting them too hard on the back, because of what you should have done, you should have done this years ago. But you were silent because you want to, Skip, at the end of the day, you want to protect that money. You want to protect, you don't want to speak out too. The very people that's running for the touchdowns and scoring and catching the touchdowns and making the baskets, those are the guys that's dying in the streets. But you ain't say nothing. But you a family. And I got upset because remember that too, that say, hey, Tom Brady and Drew Brees, we need your voices. Because you talk about we're a team. That's my brother. Okay. Well, your brother's suffering. I want to hear you. Come on. You say we brothers. You'll pat us on the back. When we do something good, that's what I'm talking about. We family. Okay? I need that same energy right now. I need that energy.
So, Shannon, if I may speak as a white man, I have been speaking out for years on national TV on racial issues.
Yes.
And I do pray about it. I ask for the right words, because I'm the first to admit I'm a white man, and I cannot feel what you feel. I have not walked for 1 second in your sneakers. I don't know. I know what I know, and so I pray and I plunge, and I try to wake up as many white people as I can possibly wake up through that camera I'm looking down right now. And I don't know if I've had 1/100th of 1% impact in this country, but I've been trying for years to do the best I can with the brain I have and the experience I have to try to say something often on As you know, I welcome these. I love to try these topics with you.
You do, Skip.
I go along for your ride. I listen to you. I learn from you. I learned from Steven Jackson this morning. I learned from Greg Jennings. I try to keep my mind as wide open as I can possibly keep it so that maybe we can actually have a little bit of real progress here, not just lip service progress. I'm talking about real live, open-minded, we get it kind of progress. I think we're starting to have a bit of that, but I'm with you. Let's check back in let's check back in a couple of months and see where we are. But I'm feeling some good things are happening here. So I don't want to be completely negative. I hear your rage. I hear your fear. I hear it all from you, and it hurts me, and it gives me chills to even talk about it because it's so raw and so real. But I'm hoping that all of this serves some little purpose, and even if it's just 1/10 of 100%, maybe that's good, that at least we did our little tiny job here today to try to open a few more eyes.
Skip, you don't realize this, but your biggest contribution right now was allowing me the opportunity to have this platform, to have these conversations. When we came on the air in 2017, I remember in 2016, when you and I had the conversation, he says, I've done my homework. I've talked to a lot of people about you. I want you to be you. And when the Colin Kaepernick situation fell into our lap, you called me. You was like, you want to talk about it? I was like, absolutely. And I thought it was going to be a one-day thing. You was like, we're going to talk about it again tomorrow, and we're going to talk about it. And when you called me Monday night, very seldom do you call me. And when you call me, I know you sent me a text first. When you say, can you talk? I know it's something that's on your mind, on your heart, and you want to talk about it. I called you, hey, can we? Yes. Skip, that's your contribution. Yes, I know you, Skip. Everybody knows in the community what Skip Bayless has done or tried to do for the black community. But your biggest contribution thus far, Skip, is allowing Shannon Sharpe to have this platform to be able to speak.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that this show does not shy away from having these conversations, and we're going to continue to have them because it feels like what needs to happen. We need to talk about what's at hand. We need to learn. We need to grow. And that is what's been most eye-opening. No mercy. Welcome back to Undisputed. So, guys, over the weekend, video came out of J.R. Smith beating up a man who was vandalizing his car. Now, this took place over the weekend, as I mentioned, protests occurring in L.A., this apparently around the Fairfax area. Shannon, do you agree with the way J.R. responded? You
know, Skip, like I said before, as I've gotten older, material things mean less to me. Had I been in my 20s, because my grandmother always said, son, we work so hard for things, let's try to take care of it. And here I am, I've worked my life. This is my life's work. And you care less. And I'm already thinking, okay, you already privileged. You already in the majority. You already look down on me. And you think you can come in my neighborhood and walk and vandalize my car? Skip, I probably would have had the same reaction as JR had. But as I've gotten older, I realized that there are things that are more important than possession than artifacts. And, you know, I was like, bro, is that really necessary? Why would you do that? But I think JR was thinking, here's some privileged, entitled white kid coming in my neighborhood thinking that he can get away with this. And it's the entitled, the elitists that, you know, we like, hold on, wait a minute, bro. You already got an advantage. Why you want to come here and destroy my things? What are you, let me ask you a question. What are you angry about? See, that's probably what JR was like, well, hold on, what are you angry about? And JR was like, nah, bro, I'm not going to have it. Skip, to be honest, I wouldn't have handled it like that because let me tell you why. It's kind of like what you see with these protests. Guys get into a frenzy and then everything that's in his way is just destroyed. And I probably would have lost it and would have ended up hurting him. So no, I wouldn't have taken it there. But JR, in that moment, you look out there and you see somebody, you know, taking something and breaking your windows or stomping on your car. That's a natural reaction. But as I've gotten older, Skip, I've gotten a little better at controlling my emotions, knowing that it can lead to bad for him and me.
Although, when I first watched this video, I thought of you, Shannon Sharpe, and I thought, my man Shannon, he might have lost it too. He might have been after that kid. I would like to believe you would have stopped halfway and said, wait a second, I can't risk this. It's not worth it to me. But I think you would have had the same emotional, maybe overreaction, but reasonable reaction to me to chase him.
Skip, I think the thing is,
go ahead.
No, I would have. And I think the thing is, Skip, I would have tackled him on the pavement, and that would have been good enough. Because I don't think he'd have got up.
All right.
He just thought I was Ray Lewis or Mike Singletary.
Okay. So I don't know the exact details. I don't think JR lives in this neighborhood. I think he had just parked his vehicle down the street from where just a few minutes earlier they had they had looted, and I don't think they burned it, but a sneaker store. I think it was a Foot Locker right there, near Fairfax. So it had just been looted, and to your point, all of a sudden there's mob mentality operating, and it's just chaos in people's brains. Everybody says it's lawless. I can do whatever I want. And I don't know what possessed some white kid. It took me a while to figure out he was a white kid because he had his hoodie up and he had his mask on. Right. So I couldn't even see for a second he was a white kid. I don't know that JR knew he was a white kid. And allow me to make this point for the record. JR then posted later on social media, this was not racially motivated. And I know JR well enough to tell you, I don't think it was either. I don't think that's what he's all about. But just seeing, I'm not sure what he used to bash the window in, a brick or whatever. He bashed the window in of the vehicle. I think it's a truck that he drives. They were just parked on the street. What are you thinking? It's like, what are you doing? And then JR lost it and chased him down. And look, when my rational mind kicks back in this day and age, as you know and I know, it's just too dangerous because I don't know, that kid could be packing. He could be carrying a knife. He could be carrying any kind of weapon that again, JR did not have a weapon that I could see. He was just going to use his fist and his feet. And he gave him a whooping. He didn't kill him, but he beat him up, and then the kid was able to get up and run off, obviously. So in the end, it kind of worked out. It was, as it says in the Old Testament, an eye for an eye. So you took out, you exacted your revenge on the kid. I would not recommend it, and I was happy to hear you say, to start this conversation off, the older Shannon, the more mature Shannon would say, no. I'm not going to try this. Just let it go. It happened.
And that's the thing, Skip. When I was younger, road rage and people, when I was in Atlanta, I had a carrying permit, and, people flip you off, and you're like, okay, I'm going to get that mofo. Or somebody, and I was like, you know what, Shannon, it's not worth it. Somebody's going to end up shooting and killing you, or you're going to end up shooting and killing someone else. So I just let it go. You cut me off, okay, clearly, you need to be somewhere faster than I need to be somewhere. So go right ahead. Skip, it's just, I'm always on edge because, not a whole lot of people know where I live. So, and I got a sign on my door. If the package doesn't need to be signed for, don't ring the doorbell. Well, about 8:30 one night, the doorbell rings. I'm like, 8:30? First thing I do, Skip, I grab the stick. I'm like, somebody trying to be funny, trying to be cute. And so I go peek through the door. And as I see, he's leaving. I'm like, bruh, the sign says if the package doesn't need to be signed for, don't ring the doorbell because I think you're trying to be funny. He's like, man, I'm sorry, I didn't read it. I was like, please read the sign. Skip, I just want to be left alone. I don't want to bother nobody. I try to be as cordial, as nice as I possibly can, especially not given the situation, Skip, because, you can't really talk to anybody anymore. But it's like, hey, you such and such, Skip and Shannon, and I acknowledge them. But Skip, I just want to be left alone. I don't want to bother nobody, and I don't want nobody to bother me. But I'm in my element here. This is my domain. Don't come bother me. But 20-year-old Shannon, Oh, yeah, Skip. That'd have been on the news. I'd have did worse than JR. Because JR friends got to him. I'd have been on him like a wildcat. They couldn't have got me off him.
Well, I'm just happy in this case, no charges have been filed and nobody got really hurt. I'm sure the kid's sore and beat up today, but at least he's still alive.
Thankfully.
I appreciate that JR posted the video. He was honest about it right away. He acknowledged what happened. I think that was really telling. And lesson learned here, I'm not going to show up unexpected at Shannon's house. No ringing the doorbell. I am staying away from bugging you, Shannon. Whew. Good reminder, guys. Well, on Thursday, Colin Kaepernick tweeted this: when civility leads to death, revolting is the only logical reaction. The cries for peace will rain down, and when they do, they will land on deaf ears because your violence has brought this resistance. We have the right to fight back. Rest in power, George Floyd. Know Your Rights Camp also tweeted that Kaepernick has helped establish a legal defense team for those protesting on the ground. So, Shannon, I'd like to ask you your reaction to Kaepernick and his social media activity with this tweet.
Well, Skip, Cap tried to be ahead of the curve. Cap tried to forewarn a lot of people that this police brutality was getting out of hand. This brutalization of unarmed black men and women was getting out of hand. And he says, what I'm trying to do is draw your attention to it. Now, we know before every game they play the national anthem. Now, I'm going to take a knee. Because at first he was sitting, and then he thought, I think Matt Boyd, I think that's the guy's name, Skip, that he talked to the Marine and Nate Boyer. And he says, instead of sitting, how about take a knee? So because he's coming, we taking a knee, Skip, is a very honorable thing. We pray on our knees. You ask a woman for marriage on your knee. So that's a very honorable thing. So he took the knee and said, I'm doing this to protest the police brutality, the brutalization of unarmed black men and women in America. That's why he did it. He told you that. But they hijacked this narrative to make it look bad. And they made it about the flag. They made it about the anthem. They made it about a lot of different things except what he told you why he was doing it. And so now, the very unfavorable, the man was whiteballed out of the NFL, the very league, and now they sent out a statement, Skip. You could have been ahead of this. Skip, I said, Skip, you and I are going to be on the right side of history. A lot of people were on the wrong side of history with Dr. King, but they want to have revisionist history and quote everything that he said. Where were you then? Because it was unpopular then. It's popular now. And you see what has transpired, Skip. I wrote a quote down that Nelson Mandela said, Skip, and we know who Mr. Mandela was, spent 27 years in prison for the rights that he believed in. He said, when a man is denied the right to live a life that he believes in, he has no choice but to become an outlaw. Black people feel that we deserve the right to have our voices heard, to not be brutalized, to have equal representation, to have equal access to health care, to have equal access to employment. We believe we have that right. Skip, but we're willing to forego two of those, the unemployment and the health care. Skip, we're forego, but not our life. And if you try and take it, if you keep doing this, we will bite back. And Cap tried to warn you of this, but his stance was very unpopular. And now the very thing that he was trying to protest, Skip, is ironic that the very pose that he held took a man's life. And now everybody is hashtagging, we got to do better and we got to do this. But I'm waiting for a few of those owners. And Skip, you know who I'm talking about. One of them represents your team. It was about the flag and how the great military and veterans, he's been radio silent. Now, he normally gets in front of the microphone and get in front of the camera and yada, 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 and talk and talk and talk. I need to hear from you now. John Mara, I need to hear from you now, bro. I don't want no statement. I want to hear the words come out your mouth because you know what you did to Cap. Just like they did to Ali. They took his career, but he had to go to Supreme Court and fight and get it back. You know what you did. But Cap was right. And Cap will look fake. Skip, I thought it was going to take longer than this. I said, you know what? Because at the time when Rosa Parks and Dr. King and a lot of these other guys were fighting and men and women were fighting, they were frowned upon. Even Dr. King was even disliked in the black community, especially when he took that stance against the Vietnam War, Skip. Woo, that did it. But now look how we look at these figures. And I thought it would take longer. I said it's going to take 20, 30 years. It only took less than 5 years. The people look at Cap in a totally different light.
So, Shannon, let me be clear on this.
Yes.
Are you okay that Colin Kaepernick has now shifted into all but encouraging revolution, that kind of reaction to resist freedom fighters? Are you okay with that kind of message from Colin Kaepernick now?
Well, Skip, the original, the Freedom Riders and the guys that John Lewis is, Skip, the thing is that they tried Skip, you have to remember now, Dr. King and the protests, the violence were perpetrated by the government, by the police.
Yeah.
They didn't do the violence. So at some point in time, Skip, how many more marches, how many more hashtags before you actually hear us? Because we found that what you really care about are artifacts, is buildings. You don't care about hearing what we have to say. So that's the only way we seem to be able to get your attention, your undivided attention, is that when we tear up stuff, sometimes it's even our own stuff. But we don't know how to control that rage because we're so frustrated, because we've been talking for so long, and we've gotten hashtags, and we've gotten T-shirts, Skip, I can't breathe. Skip, didn't Eric Dyson just have a T-shirt about 4 or 5 years ago? And now we done had to do a copy it again. The same thing. So you're not listening.
So, Shannon, I told you earlier in the show, as I watched on live LA TV last night, Santa Monica businesses and cars burned, looted, rioting widespread in what used to be a peaceful little tourist destination of a community on the water, on the Pacific Ocean. I had mixed emotions because I hear you. I hear what Colin is saying. Again, my gut is telling me in the end, it's not the right way, but is it maybe the only way now to get America's attention, white America's attention? As I told you earlier, it's hard for me to condone rioting, but I cannot condemn rioting because it continues to open eyes. I don't like it that innocent shopkeepers are losing everything to vandalism and fire and theft. I don't like it. But if that's what it takes to wake this country completely up, then I'm barely okay with it. And I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth, because when I first saw that Colin tweeted this last Thursday, I'm thinking, man, Colin, you took a big left turn here when you're saying when civility, meaning peaceful protest, leads to death, meaning murder of George Floyd. Revolting is the only logical reaction. Okay, I get it. I get it. I get that hundreds of years of pent up, built up frustration and anger and fear are spilling out. And again, look, are some of the looters, are they just robbers? Some are. We got some fringe people involved.
Yeah.
They just want to rob.
They're taking advantage of an opportunity.
We get it.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. But in the biggest picture, we had widespread rioting across this country that was just simply an outpouring of we don't know what else to do frustration. We've had enough.
Right.
We don't know how better to express it except we're just going to have to break the doors down and knock the windows out and go in there and take everything and set it on fire. Now will you notice? Now do we have your attention? And again, it's not the greatest way to do it, but maybe at this moment it's the only way. I hope it comes to a peaceful end. I don't want to see what happened out here in LA in 1992 when, remember, the 4 officers who beat the hell out of Rodney King got acquitted. And you know what happened? The black community of LA said, we have had enough. And rioting broke out and fire and 63 people died. And I don't want to see anybody die. To my knowledge, I don't think anybody's died yet in a protest or any kind of riot situation that I know of. Maybe there's somebody I missed this morning, but God help us all that we can draw the line at that. But God also help us that eyes are being opened by the frustration that the black community is taking out on our cities just to say enough. I'm with that, and I'm with Colin on that point.
Skip, if you look at that's how America was founded, was a riot.
Yeah.
Great Britain wouldn't listen.
It was.
They didn't want to hear it. If you look at any, that when you want a democracy, nobody will concede power, Skip, unless you fight for it. It's funny that we got to fight. Think about it, Skip. Look at this here. Black Americans got to fight for rights that's bestowed upon white Americans upon birth. How? I thought we were equal. Why do I got to fight for something that should be given to me at birth? And you still got to fight, and you still tell me no. You tell me I'm treated equal. Skip, I'm just trying to figure if we're treated equal, if you look at, Skip, even at the lowest unemployment rate, even though blacks are the minority, we still was more unemployed than whites, even in the minority. Skip, how are we the minority and more blacks and brown people die from COVID-19 than the white majority? So how you in the minority, but you die in the majority? People like, hold on, wait a minute. How are you the minority and you get more for education than me in the minority and I get less? So black America and people have said, hold on, wait a minute.
Yep.
You want to hoard everything up here and not give me anything and then tell me just be patient. In the words of James Baldwin, how much more time? My great-grandmother, my grandmother, my grandfather, my brother, my uncles, my aunts, we've been patient. How much longer you need for your change? No. And Skip, they forget, and everybody's like, well, look what Colin. Do you forget what the man, the guy that's in the White House, what he tweet? When the looting starts, the shooting, he retweeted that. You remember he was on the campaign trail. Take him out there and rough him up. We need our police officers to be even rougher. You see, Skip? He perpetuating violence. Skip, black people have no history of perpetrating violence against whites. It's only a reaction of violence that's been besieged on us. At some point in time, Skip, you got to fight back. Like you said, you got to fight back for yourself, and sometimes you got to stand up for yourself, or people will continue to run over you and take from you.
And Shannon, forgive me if I'm stepping out of bounds here. Forgive me if I'm getting too political, but I must make note of a tweet from our president, I believe it was early yesterday, in which our president said these thugs, all caps, Thugs, all caps, thugs, are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd. And he ended the tweet with, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. You talk about throwing gasoline on the fire. That's a 1960s expression that was first uttered, I believe, by the chief of police of Miami, Florida, back in the day. When again, that was his reaction. And it was a racist reaction of, hey, if you want to riot, we'll start shooting. And again, it just pierced my heart to read this tweet, because now you're re-emphasizing everything Kaepernick is tweeting. Yeah, so Kaepernick is saying, see, I told you, that's where we are. Now you've forced us into that.
Exactly, Skip. And then he says that these thugs, which is, we know what thugs mean, that's another word for the N-word, but okay. But Charlottesville, there were good people. And Skip, there were good people in Charlottesville. When those people were storming the Capitol, the buildings, about being served by getting haircuts and getting tattoos, they just want to be heard. Those are really nice and good people. You see the tone in which he has? He speaks to a specific group of people. He think he's slick, but he's not. We hear.
And I believe that Twitter blocked that tweet as insensitive, as too sensitive for everyone to see, which is, I think, as telling as can be. No mercy. Joining us now, friend of the show, Michael Eric Dyson. Thank you for being here. He is the author of Tears We Cannot Stop, which addresses the plague of police brutality against Black Americans. Michael, I know you have been a busy guy with lots to talk about, and I just want to start by asking your reaction to what you've been seeing across the country in response to the horrible murder of George Floyd.
I weep for my people. The grief is profound, the suffering deep, the cry poignant and compelling. I weep for my nation, a nation that still to this day refuses to recognize the fundamental decency and humanity of Black people. When we say Black Lives Matter, we're not trying to suggest no one else's life matters. We're suggesting that other lives have been recognized, but ours still haven't. And so when I see what's happening with George Floyd, a Black man begging for relief from a knee applied to his neck, the full weight of that white man, that white cop upon his neck, the full weight of a society that refuses to lift its knee from our necks, the full weight of a society that is imbued with white supremacist logic and ideologies that penetrate even some aspects of law enforcement in this country. So I weep for this nation because George Floyd is a human being who deserved to be alive today. There is no reason that he shouldn't be here except for the heinous disregard for Black life that seems to pervade not only the police force of America, but American society. And we see it in many ways, not only with George Floyd, but in Central Park, where the police were weaponized, the very threat of them to be called upon a man who was bird watching. When we think about Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, doing a simple thing, jogging down the street and being subject to being hunted down and killed like an animal. So unless this nation addresses the deeply entrenched racial bias and racial inequality that prevails, we will be having this conversation again. As deeply, profoundly painful as it is, we still have not learned to embrace, to recognize, and ultimately, in a very powerful sense, to love each other as fellow American citizens.
Doc, it's 400 years in the making. How do you start to undo and unravel and tear down a system that was built to hold power and to keep certain groups of people in a certain space and only allow a few to get out while holding the majority of those back? How do you get out of this space? How do you convince America that's been in power for such a long time, that does not want to concede that power, but want to hold on to that space? How do you undo 401 years?
That's a great point. And that is the question, because when the New York Times, led by Nicole Hannah-Jones at the New York Times Magazine, put forth the 1619 Project, on the one hand, you would think, man, there would have been tremendous celebration, because what she's trying to suggest is from 1619, when Black souls were extricated from their rest in African soil and forcibly brought here against their will in Jamestown, that this began the long pilgrimage of plantation life and of tremendous suffering and radical racial inequality in the country. But so many, even liberal historians, oh my God, this is wrong. America did not begin with the pledge that it would maintain and preserve enslavement. There's a kind of willful disregard for the truth that must prevail. And if we can't get serious scholars and historians to acknowledge this, what more can we expect of our American citizenry? But having said that, we got to do a couple of things. First of all, shows like this have to continually chip away at the architectonic structure of ignorance and of refusal to see. There's a willful blindness here that says, I don't want to look. We got to face history, number one. Number two, we've got to commit ourselves as American citizens to fight this bigotry. And whatever we make of the overspill of anger and hostility in the streets, there is at least the coming together of black and brown and red and yellow in those streets. If we could find a way, forge a way of Yeah, out of those violent arenas, how better would we be? And then finally, I think we have to admit this, that when we talk about black people rioting, though we know it's multiracial, what about white riots in corporate America? What about white riots in CEO businesses and CEO rooms, boardrooms? What about the white riot going on in the White House? A predatory, neo-fascist president who refuses to acknowledge the central claim of humanity for black people, for brown people, for immigrants, and all others. This man is a plague upon this nation. We're dealing with a simultaneous plague, a pandemic of COVID-19 and a pandemic of COVID-16-19. And the deeply entrenched racist resistance to the humanity of black people is something we have got to acknowledge. If we don't say it, if we don't acknowledge it, and then move in our schools, in our churches, our synagogues, our temples, in our public and private enterprise, in our civic, in our civic gatherings, we will not be able to confront this issue. And furthermore, I'm so proud of those athletes who are standing up. I'm proud of the few white athletes who have spoken up. I wish Tom Brady, the GOAT, would speak up. You're throwing a ball to a black man. Why don't you talk about a knee being put on that neck? That could have been your player. That potentially could have been anybody in any of your families who have been subject to this. So I wish that white athletes would see, if we are a team and a family, let's talk about it in a way that recognizes their humanity.
Doctor, we love and respect you and the power of your voice that you were blessed with. And I lean on you and I learn from you. And I ask you this question today. Is rioting now the right way to draw the attention needed to this issue?
Well, it's a very powerful question. Obviously, clearly, no one condones rioting. No one condones the destruction of property. But oh my God, I wish we could be just as upset at the way in which black bodies are being torn limb from limb. I wish we could be just as upset at modern technological wizardry applied to black bodies that leads to lynching. I wish we could be just as vehement in our denunciations of the hate and scorn that black people have to deal with. And then when we look at why they are rioting, why they are rebelling, why they are resisting, even Martin Luther King Jr. said, a riot is the voice of the unheard. So the question we have to ask, my dear brother Skip, is what's not being heard? And not only what's not being heard and who's not being heard, but who's silencing those from being heard. That's the real riot. So we have slow violence and fast violence. What we see in the streets, fast violence. What we see in the boardroom, slow violence. The murder of hope and aspiration on a daily basis. So we look at the consequence, but not the cause. We look at the symptom, but not the underlying reality and disease that fuels and feeds it. Martin Luther King Jr. in his letter from Birmingham jail said, to focus on law and order without talking about the disorder and chaos that fuels and feeds it is to be hypocritical. And I don't want to be a hypocrite. Yes, we must protect property, but more than property, we must protect bodies. Property means nothing in the face of the human body. And when black people see that this nation refuses to stand up to protect its body, they don't care about Gucci. They don't care about Louis Vuitton. They don't care about the local haberdashery. What they care about is the building called their bodies that are being torn down daily from the quiet riots, as Roger Wilkins called them, of white supremacy and affecting us every day. That's the real riot we have to be concerned about.
Doc, what people need to understand, where did blacks learn to riot? Where did they learn this kind of violence? Violence that was perpetuated against them. It was those. What about those bombers in the 60s when they bombed the churches? When they bombed someone's house if they found out you voted? There was just a case about a month ago where a white group came up to the black family's house and tried to take the boy out of the house because they thought he had something to do with the girl's disappearance. Little did they know the girl was gone somewhere else. But you see how they do that? We're the only race of people that somebody came from one continent, took moms, dads, separated us. That never happened to anybody else. And you deny that happened. All you tell us, well, that wasn't you, that wasn't me. So why do you care? Because that's ingrained and it has not stopped. You keep trampling on our emotions. If you rob a man of hope, you give him every reason to lash out and do whatever it takes to hold on, to grab on, to survive. If you cannot rob a man of hope, because if he's in despair, he will do, because he says, I have nothing to lose, you rob me of that hope. So what do I have to lose besides going out with a blaze of glory? So, as you said, Dr. King said, the unheard, they hear, they refuse to listen. The blindest man is not the man that cannot see, it's the one that chooses not to see. They choose not to hear us, Doc, but it's going to get worse. It's like these storms, these hurricanes, this flooding is getting worse. The conditions are prime for it to get worse. The conditions are prime for this to get worse, America. You better listen. Yes. And I think to piggyback on that brilliant point and the powerful point that Skip made as well, and let me respond to both of them. The reality is this. The shame of a riot, the shame of an urban rebellion is not the activity of the people there alone. It is the fact that they have not been heard until such a thing occurs. And look at the trick bag that Black and Brown and other people are put in. We say now, you're distracting me from hearing you, a great point you're making through your protest, because you are speaking louder with your actions than your words. But the reality is, when the words were there alone without the riots, nothing was heard. When Colin Kaepernick took a knee, it was as if he were rioting. The white owners of the NFL acted as if Colin Kaepernick had taken a blowtorch to their building to burn it down. So the reality is, you don't want Black people doing anything. You don't want us to respectfully engage in civil protest, and you decry us when we go out into the streets, spilling out, as Shannon has talked about, from the centuries of pain, the grief, the hardship, and the suffering. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. And any nation that elevates property above human beings, property above persons, is a morally bankrupt civilization and society. To kill a man or woman because they are trying to steal your car is nefarious. Yes, even J.R. Smith, I understand, you're upset that somebody tried to, that bashed your window and you put a whipping on his behind, and I get the reality there. But for me and mine, property is not bigger than personality and people. And the evil of American society is that it has reduced Black people to property. And then when we cease to become property, it still treated us after enslavement, right, on plantations that were mobile, called sharecropping. And we know what sharecropping was. They were tricking us into forcibly going along with the society and perpetuating a legacy of inequality because we were illiterate. We didn't know that we had long since paid our bill, and we were kept there. It was slavery by another name. And so what we see now is violence by another name. Just because you do it sneakily, just because you throw the rock and then hide your hand, just because you drop the bomb and declare that you are innocent and a policeman of the world, doesn't mean that you are not engaging in fundamentally inimical propositions against the humanity of Black people. And, by the way, undercutting the best values of this society as a nation. E pluribus unum, out of many, one.
I hate to interrupt you guys because I know this conversation is far from over. Michael Eric Dyson is going to stick around as we continue this discussion. No mercy. Welcome back to Undisputed. We're still here with author, professor, human rights activist, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. We so appreciate your time right now. And Skip, I know you had a specific direction. You wanted to go a question for Michael.
I do, Doctor. Please give us your insight into the latest shift in the message via Twitter that we're getting from Colin Kaepernick, who tweeted the other day, when civility, meaning peaceful protest, leads to death, meaning murder, revolting is the only logical reaction. Your violence has brought this resistance. We have the right to fight back. And now a fund, as you know, Doctor, has been has been set up to support the, as Colin calls them, the freedom fighters who got arrested in Minneapolis and maybe in other cities. Your thoughts on all of the above?
So it's tragic that this is the choice, right? It's tragic that black people and brown people, white people, Asian brothers and sisters and others who are protesting in the streets have a choice between taking care of their bodies under a pandemic. Remember, this is still a pandemic where people are not socially distancing, where all of them don't wear masks. But the need is so deep and is so great that they're willing to risk their lives because remaining home means that they will still be vulnerable. I think, Shannon and Skip and Sister Jenny, the reality is that black people look at it, even during a pandemic, the police are on message. They will kill. Even during the pandemic, certain white supremacists and vigilantes are on message. They will murder. So we have to risk everything in order to extract from America the final proof of the promise that it gave to us as citizens of this nation. Look, I understand the anger of a Colin Kaepernick. I understand his resolve to say that revolution is what's necessary. We do need a revolution. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about a revolution of values. So, and Frantz Fanon talked about the way in which violence was being deployed against the bodies of the third world and against vulnerable people, now having to meet that fire with fire. Obviously, as a Baptist minister and a nonviolent human being, I prefer nonviolent means to that end. But let's be real. Did Martin Luther King Jr. accomplish what he accomplished without violence? No. He didn't promote it, but he understood he could provoke it. When he went to Birmingham, he knew that Bull Connor, as a bigoted buffoon, would engage in unleashing water hoses on black men and women and children, and the bicuspids and incisors of police dogs ripping at the flesh of vulnerable black people. Martin Luther King Jr. orchestrated the provocation of violence to underscore the hypocrisy of American citizenship and to also make a compelling argument to the nation that what is going on here is fundamentally evil and corrupt. And so he wanted America to be transformed, but he knew he had to expose the virus, so to speak, of hatred in order for a vaccine of love, of reconciliation to occur. And I think that's where Colin Kaepernick understands his position right now. And here's the point again. The shame is that it takes that in order for us to be heard. The shame is that it takes the rebellion in the street and the revolt and the looting and rioting for America to understand just how painful it is to be black in America, to endure the hurts, the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune in the name of an American society for which we have fought, bled, and died, and yet cannot extend to us the fundamental decency of our humanity or our full citizenship.
Doc, you know, we talk about Dr. King a lot, but if you remember in 64 in Harlem when they had the riots, in 65 in Watts, they had another riot in 67 when the police officer invaded the after-hours bar in Detroit. And Dr. King, prior to that, was very outspoken on riots. He detested them. He said they can do it all they want to, but Martin Luther King is not for that. But he changed his tune. Skip 1 year to the day before he died on April 4th, 1967. He says, I can no longer condemn those that riot without calling out the greatest purveyors of violence, my own government.
Right.
He says, how can I say that you guys are just doing violence out there that's robbing and looting are wrong without calling out the very government that perpetrate that against the very people that you say are American and have the same rights as everybody else?
That's right.
You see how that changed? 1 year to the day, he said that.
He did. And he said, I refuse to talk about the Molotov cocktails thrown by young black men in the street when we're dropping napalm on rice paddies in Vietnam. And so he saw the essential unity of his moral universe, right? While Billy Graham was going into South Africa saying, no, God is concerned about the soul. I leave the body to government. No, sir. Howard Thurman, the great mystic and author and preacher, said the place and time of a man's life and a woman's life on earth is the place and time of his life. The body is sacred. It is the house of God for those of us who believe so. And when you tear down that temple, that policeman was doing sacrilegious work. He was engaging in civic evil and social inequality and injustice by depriving George Floyd of the right to live. So again, Martin Luther King Jr. said, that's the real violence. That's the violence that we must underscore. That's the violence that we must highlight. And that's the violence that every minister, imam, and religious figure should be preaching against in his or her temple or mosque or rabbi, in an ashram for those who practice there, the Bhagavad Gita, the Holy Quran, the Bible, the Old Testament, the art of motorcycle maintenance, Snoop Dogg's lyrics, whatever you listen to. You should understand that this is the evil that confronts us. And unless we as a nation galvanize around the recognition of our humanity, we are doing ill service to the noble deeds and aspirations of American citizenship.
If the police understand.
Just go ahead, Shannon.
Go ahead, Skip. Go ahead, Skip. I was going to say the criminal justice system is set up in such a way. You have the police that arrest the offenders. You have the DA that prosecute the offenders. Too many times we have police trying to do DA's work. Do your job. Arrest the offender. Now your job is done. Let the DA dole out the sentence and the punishment. That's not your job,
and
police.
They try to act like judge and jury and God, deciding when to take a life. Pro-life at the beginning, aborting human life that is black at the end.
Doctor, thank you so much for your words, for your time, and we look forward to having you back on our show soon. Really powerful stuff. We appreciate it.
No mercy.
Well, today's Undisputed has looked a bit different, and we've had important and powerful conversations as we have reacted to the protests. And it's crazy how we do a 3-hour show, and I'm so emotional thinking about the death of George Floyd. We have reacted, we have tried to have honest conversations, and it hasn't been easy. And we are not done talking about this. But Shannon, I would like a final thought from you on today on what we have talked about.
Skip, these are very difficult conversations that we must have in order to advance the ball. For far too long, we've turned a blind eye, we've turned a deaf ear, and pretending that these issues did not exist. We know they do exist. And I understand that, Skip, we're a sports debate talk show, but this is sports. This affects us all because so many of our sports heroes are black young men. And this goes to them and for us to have an opportunity to lend our voice, to let people know we hear you, we understand, and we're willing to do something. We've had enough. And for you, Skip, to give me the opportunity to sit across from you and to talk about these issues, that in and of itself is an accomplishment.
Which is why, Shannon, today of all days, it has been an honor to share this stage with you. And I want you to know here on live TV, I am so proud of all you stand so strongly for when it comes to racial injustice. God bless you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Stay strong, people.
Stay strong. And again, maybe tomorrow we'll do a little more sports, but this is a very important day for us here on Undisputed.
Yep. I agree with Skip, and I echo that, Shannon. Thank you for paving the way and for your honesty throughout all of this. How can we be a part of the change? That's what I'm taking from today. And we'll be back at the same time tomorrow.